that's how friendship develops, but can they vary? Well, some of the work by Dr. Bill Bukowski has alluded to the fact that, yeah, friendship can be very different. And we find that friendship can vary in lots of different axes. For instance, it's possible for a friendship not to be reciprocated, and it can be non-mutual. In a non-mutual friendship, this is the idea that one person in the friendship has that emotional attachment and looks forward to seeing the other person, but to the second person, they're just acquaintances and it doesn't really matter. This can be very stressful, especially in junior high when somebody feels like they really matter to someone, but they don't. And so it's important to understand that that non-mutuality is real. We also have non-mutuality in that both individuals may identify their connection as a friendship, but how they rank each other. One person may rank them as best friends, and the other person may not see their friendship as a best friendship. In fact, it's very common that if we were to ask a classroom of students in junior high to identify their best friend, that very few people will get perfectly 100% reciprocated best friendships. It's much more common for a group of 3 or 4 friends to all identify a different person in that group as their best friend, and for it to be non-mutual. We also know that sometimes friendships can vary in terms of homophily. Homophily is the idea that they like similar behaviors. And although that is a driving mechanism in how friendships form in middle childhood, it may not be necessary as we get older. As we start to devalue as much the activities and interests, we may start to open up our mind to having friends who are very different from ourselves, but have some similar values. Now, this is not perfect. It would be hard to have a friend who you could never do activities with because you have nothing in common. But we find that once you become emergent adults, it's the idea that as long as you have some activities in common, you don't need to have all activities in common. And so you can hang out in the things you have similar, and it's okay to be interdependent from one another rather than just completely synonymous in all things you do. We also find a major point of variability is in terms of how friendships differ in their readiness for intimacy and self-disclosure. Although everyone prefers a little bit more intimacy and self-disclosure as they move from the childhood to the adolescent years, still in adolescence and adulthood, we tend to have a lot of individual variances. And this is the idea that some individuals really like those heart-to-heart discussions. They will bare everything and say their innermost thoughts and innermost conundrums. Versus other people, they don't need to share that, they don't have the desire to share that, and they are more interested in forming friends that if they can just say, wow, Wednesday was rough, and their friend says, yeah, that's as much intimacy as they need to share. And we can even find this in how friends prefer to sit. We find that friends that prefer to have face-to-face contact and really make a lot of eye contact and smiling towards each other, they tend to display and share more intimacy. Versus friends that prefer to sit more parallel to one another, think about sitting side by side in a movie theater or when playing a video game on a large screen or when watching a sports thing, they are more likely to prefer less self-disclosure and less intimacy. Both types of friendship seems beneficial, and it all depends on personality traits. And finally, it's important to note that friendship does vary in the amount of positivity and support. Some friendship is really good, and you can expose yourself in very vulnerable ways and feel that the person will have your back no matter what. But some friendship, although there is that mutual affection and attachment going on, there isn't that emotional support. We can have friends that criticize us. We can have friends that drag us down. We can have friends that, although we hang out with them and we look forward to seeing them and they look forward to seeing us, they actually bully us quite a lot of times. And so this is why it's important to highlight the dark side of friendships. And one scholar who has really pointed out a lot of attributes here is Dr. Amanda Rose. So the dark side of friendship can mean a variety of things. First, we could be talking about friends who are supporting each other but doing maladaptive behaviors. These might be friends who are co-ruminating. That is, they might be both experiencing a mental health crisis. Two friends that are very depressed might feed off each other and reduce their mental state and reduce their affect to a more negative stance. We also find that two friends may co-ruminate over something like an eating disorder, and they may help to feed off each other and make each other more preoccupied with their body image or their weight. Friends may also co-ruminate and really push each other into doing dangerous things like being aggressive or taking substances or early sexual exploration they're not emotionally or physically ready for. And so there is a lot of problems with how friends might push us to more problematic and maladaptive behaviors. In addition, we may have friends that are just really toxic for us, and these may be referred to as frenemies. This is the combination of the words friends and enemies. And so this is the idea that You get a lot of negative feelings being around this person. You get frustrated, you feel embarrassed and belittled, yet you can't stop associating with them. And the affiliation you have towards this person is so strong. So it might start off as something like friendly competition or banter or sarcasm, but then it may dwindle down into a really painful and toxic, hateful atmosphere. And finally, as mentioned, sometimes friendship is non-reciprocal and one party does not fully understand that. And so they are there putting their heart on the line, waiting for the other person to reciprocate, and it's just not there. Another thing we have to talk about that's problematic when we talk about friends is friendlessness. We find that on average, 20% of children and adolescents consider themselves to have no friends. And this can be short-term or this can be chronic. And there's lots of reasons why this might happen. They might be a child who moves around, a military family who constantly has to resettle into different locations and feel like none of their friendships are enduring. They might be a child who is out of the school system for a long duration of time due to health issues, if they have a chronic health condition. They may also be a child who has very low social skills and low impression management, such that they're just never picked to be part of a friendship circle. They may be picking the wrong types of friends. It's possible they could be socially competent enough to have friends, but the friends they keep trying to make friends with are not able to reciprocate. Either they're the military kids who are going to move away all the time, or they have other issues in their life that they just can't build that friendship at that point in time. This is a really important risk factor to understand because chronic friendlessness is very much linked to chronic loneliness, low self-esteem, and depression. And so this is something we want to identify if a child reports not having any friends. Some of the strategies for this, of course, would be introducing them to friends in other contexts, not just in the school context, but through extracurriculars or through other avenues. So we know that friendship can go wrong. We know that friendship can be toxic. But luckily, in most instances, when there is positive, adaptive friendships going on, it's linked with lots of positive things. We find that whether it's emotional, social, or cognitive, there's lots of great outcomes associated with having friends. On the more emotional side of things, it can help us reduce stress. It's fantastic. And it can help us to improve our self-esteem, feeling as we matter to other people. And it gives us that sense of emotional security. We have that safety net that we can be vulnerable with. And even if we're not fully disclosing the secret, we can just be someone we can laugh with or be silly with or, just be relaxed with. That can help us with our emotional security. In terms of friendship, well, once you have a couple friends, the larger peer group tends to be more accepting towards you. Once they see that you have a couple friends that like to eat lunch with you and like to sit with you, then the greater peer group tends to be more accepting and views you as a likable person. This can also help you to form a secure attachment if you didn't have a secure attachment at other points in your life, or help you to maintain that secure attachment and social skills. And speaking of social skills, having friends helps us to work on our communication skills, inviting others to play, interact with others, understand the behavioral norms of what's going on in our childhood, and helping us with our conflict resolution skills. Even in a positive friendship, there is going to be conflict, and that's okay. And so being able to work out that and negotiate is absolutely positive. And helping with those conflict resolution skills teaches us things like problem solving skills. How do we get around other problems, not just interpersonal problems? And this can also help us to develop academic skills. And so we find that kids with more friends, they feel more positive when they're in school, especially if their friends are in the classroom with them, and they will be able to engage and perform better at school.